Hi, everyone, and welcome to the UNWLA Book Club. I apologize for my voice, but I got sick. It shouldn't interfere with the discussion, but I mean, I know that it doesn't sound pretty. Um, I'm really glad that you're here today with us. And I'm really glad that today is our third session, and I'm really glad that we have been consistent with our conversations. And today we're discussing Ecocide in Ukraine, the environmental cost of Russia's war by Darya Tsymbalyuk. If you joined us for our previous conversations, you might notice a little bit of a shift because before that, we focused on personal stories, on emotional worlds and feelings. And today we're looking at something that we don't always talk about right away, how war affects the environment and its long-term impact on everything around us. And I'm not just talking about cities and people. I'm talking about land, water, soil, air, everything. And how Darya puts it herself, um, the act of writing this book was a process of understanding and piecing the fragments together, not necessarily to make sense, because it's really impossible to make sense of war, but to pause and think and to invite readers to do the same, to pause and think. And finally, experiences of living through ecological crisis are not new to and they're not unique to Ukraine. Let's remember Chernobyl, a story of devastation and horrors. So before we bring in our guest, Ira, I'd like to exchange a couple of thoughts between us. Um, so, when you first heard the word ecocide, was it when you read the book?
No, I think that being Ukrainian, we've we've heard and been exposed to, excuse me, to several words that end in side: ethnocide, genocide, ecocide, and
Linguicide, yeah.
yes, and it is it's part of our almost national history that. Something is always happening to us, whether it is in the field of nature, whether it is in the field of national awareness and consciousness, whether it's in our very existence. So I don't. The word was not unfamiliar, but
Hmm.
it wasn't a word that I was very um, close to. Let's put it that way.
Hmm.
And it's a painful word, obviously, because human beings, what are we without our environment? We're nothing. We can't exist without it. We're part of it, and when that environment is negatively impacted, it is something that also impacts on us. And I think that what Darya Tsymbalyuk draws very beautifully and also sadly is just how interconnected all of this is. This war and its ramifications, how it affects us physically but also emotionally, how it impacts the animals that we love and live with, how it impacts the birds that we like to listen to, how it impacts the soil, which every Ukrainian loves because it feeds us and feeds half the planet, and how that soil, that zemля, is suffering. So it's a book that's not very scientific, but extremely lyrical and I would say
Mm.
poetic in its sadness.
That's actually surprising because um, I was like last night, I was kind of like thinking about what I read in this book, and I was like going through all my notes and snapshots that I took on my phone, and I was thinking about what I would say to a person, how I would describe this book to a person who's never read it. And and that word lyrical came to mind. So this book is not only dynamic, thought-provoking and very factual, but it's also like very personal and very lyrical, and like exactly the word, lyrical. And I do have another question. Is there any idea, one idea or one moment uh, that you will carry forward? I mean, it's really hard to just like single out just like one thing, but if you could, what would that be?
I think probably sort of the totality of war and destruction. Darya Tsymbalyuk focuses on several areas in this book. So she divides it into several chapters: water, zemlya, the earth. In English we have many words for soil, land, earth, dirt. In Ukrainian, we only have one, zemlya, and it's also the name of our planet. So it's and I think the fact that we only have one word for all of these different connotations of earth is a particular strength, because there's Zemля and Zemля and Zemля and Zemля and Zemля, and we're all part of that Zemля. So after Zemля comes air, plants, bodies, physical bodies, our physical bodies, but the earth's bodies as well. And finally, energy. And all of this stuff is interconnected. If maybe in the olden days, we thought of war as um, two armies battling it out on some field. War for the last, I don't know, I think more than a century has been something that has not just affected opposing armies, but it has affected people, communities, cities, streets. I mean, the totality of war is really something to wonder at in a frightening kind of way. And I think that's the thing that is the most important idea that I take away from this book, that it isn't just Russians killing Ukrainians, it's Russians killing Ukraine's world. It's killing
Mm.
all of us on some level. It's killing our very existence space, destroying it to such an extent that parts of it will become unlivable. A bunch of years ago, my husband and I, we visited France, and we went to, for one reason or another, both of us were reading books about World War One. So we decided to go to some of these places where some of these huge battles, these horrific battles where literally millions of people died, were killed within the span of several days. And you know what? That war is still there. We walk through forests where you can still see the ravines from the exploding shells. The trenches have not completely grown over. There are cemeteries all over the place bearing testament to the sacrifice of all those soldiers. So, this kind of ecocide, this war, this totality of it never goes away. It learns to live with you in a different way, thanks to Mother Nature, who is probably more resilient than we are, and somehow covers up all of these what's the word, God, the wounds that have been inflicted on her, and the scars.
Yeah, but for me, even though the war permeates like every aspect of our life, like you said, I mean, you cannot run away from it. You cannot hide away from it. It's like everywhere. Um, but at the same time, what really stood out to me in the book is that um, despite of all the destruction, despite of all the devastation, um, the depletion of resources and everything, the war generates at the same time um, new living conditions. And I guess it's just like how nature, how nature survives. Like even though it's affected, it's like crazy and immensely affected by the war, it is still able to recover and kind of like be reborn. Um, at this point, I would like to share a short video from Darya Tsymbalyuk that was recorded especially for today's conversation with a message for all of you, our viewers and our listeners. Let's watch it.
Hi everybody, I'm Darya Tsymbalyuk and I heard you will be discussing today my book, Ecocide in Ukraine, the environmental cost of Russia's war, for which I'm very grateful. I hope you have an engaging and critical discussion. So it's a very personal book as much as it is a research book, and research-wise it's grounded in sources, 90% of which come from Ukraine, whether these are environmental reports or media reports, and the work of journalists has really been impressive and dangerous as well, and quite often they're the first ones to document the environmental impact. So for me it was very important to name every journalist, to name every person quoted in any of the media reports, to name every scholar, every scientist, every poet in the book directly, so not only in references, but in the fabric of the text, which you probably noticed. And yes, I mean there are many things I can tell about it. I'm sorry I can't be there present with you online. I've been traveling a lot and presenting the book, and the time that the session is scheduled unfortunately overlaps with me being on the road. But I'm happy to be in touch, and if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to email me. My email is at the University of Chicago's webpage. You can easily find me, and I think it's also listed on my website. And I would love to hear about the landscapes that are dear to you, what kind of landscapes raised you, and if you have any stories about particular plants or animals, or people who take care of all the living beings in Ukraine. I'm always happy to hear. And with that, I'm also just hoping, like all of us, that many of the landscapes about which I'm writing will be safe again to experience and to travel to and to live in. And so with, as the situation gets worse and worse, I'm grateful that you are discussing the book, that you're reading it, and that through that you're also thinking about all that abundance of life which really needs to be protected and cherished in Ukraine. Thank you so much.
That was Darya Tsymbalyuk. Now I'd like to introduce our guest today. We're very happy to welcome Maria Fedoruk. She is a postdoctoral research associate at Hamburg University of Applied Sciences. Maria works as an environmental economy researcher in the fields of sustainable environment, circular economy, energy efficiency, waste management, and sustainable cities. So we're especially glad to have her perspective as we think through some of these questions. Maria, thank you very much for joining us today. We're thrilled to have you. We're also thrilled to hearing from you, especially some of this new data that you've been collecting over the last few days that you will tell us about as we continue talking. So from your perspective as an environmental economy researcher, how did this book resonate with you? Did anything in particular stand out to you? Now, as an environmental economist, obviously you think economically and think about economy. So this ecocide will also have profound economic ramifications for Ukraine. So here's a whole bunch of questions that I invite you to answer now.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm also coordinating Ukraine Nature Network, and this network actually specifies on the environmental impacts of war. So I'm also trying to connect people who are investigating the impacts on environment, but also trying to mitigate, to protect, and we have people working on protection areas, but also with the energy situation, with the waste management and soil as well, actually. So Zemlya, as you said at the beginning, it's also our big topic within the network. And yes, the last 2 days we had a conference in Hamburg, based in Hamburg, where Ukrainian researchers and NGOs actually were presenting their results and discussing different possibilities. How can we actually work together in this situation? But also we had partners from another countries, like from Germany, from Sweden, from Poland. So this particular topic is important and resonate not only with us. Consider us Ukrainians, I mean, because I'm also Ukrainian. So considering the question about my field, environmental economy, it's a huge actually discussion right now because well, what I'm researching is how to monetize impacts on environment. Before the war, they were about business, about industrial impacts on the environment, how can we monetize, how can we change the production. Now it's about how can we actually mitigate and how much cost the recovery. We have numbers from the Ministry of Environmental Protection about the costs of nature that is lost for us, that was damaged, and they have this report every month because the situation is changing, becoming worse every month. So that's one point of view to how to take a look on this situation. How much resources we lost, how much biodiversity we lost, and how it's actually very subjective, I think, to measure, because this long-term perspective, it's very difficult to measure. What I think is more possible to do is to calculate each case by case, and to understand how much investment we need to have to recover, or at least to mitigate the damages that we have at the moment. So the book resonates directly with my topic because it describes the damages on different parts and trying to combine them all together, which is the first step of having the economic numbers, economic measurements. We need to understand the environmental impact. So as the title of the book is saying, environmental costs. So we need to understand what the damage was done, and then try to understand how can we change it. And the most important, to make the aggressor pay, we need to understand the numbers, how much they should pay. And of course, for that, we need to have very decent and strong evidences of the environmental impacts, and strongly calculated and reasonable fundamental monetization of these damages.
Like piggybacking on all that you've said, is there are there any real measurable terms right now?
I can say that official measurements, the most official, are from our ministry, of course, who could be more official than Ministry of Environmental Protection. And yes, they are trying to calculate the damages on environment and to measure it in money, to monetize it.
Piggybacking on your question, Anya, I wonder, and I don't know who can answer this, is there a formula? I mean, has this been done historically in previous wars? Has the environmental fallout, the environmental damage of any given war ever been documented? Is there a formula how we can calculate this damage? Is there a list of things that are part of this damage? Do you know anything about that, Maria?
Yes, and it's a very complicated question and very good question from your side because, yes, unfortunately, there were also wars, and after these wars, it was made an attempt to make the aggressor paid. And at the beginning of the war, it was even the whole initiative group together working on this topic and trying to understand how it was working before. And the conclusion is that it's very difficult to make the aggressor pay, and the success rate is really low. And the formulas, they are also not inlined. So, for example, if to take the formula that was applied for Ukrainian monetization of environmental impacts, usually we take the taxes rate. But there are many other possibilities to measure it, and they could be quite subjective, and to have them systematized and international approved. It's a very complicated topic because there are many discussions which formula is the best, and if it's not subjective, because as I said, it's very difficult to have it not subjective. You can, for example, calculate how much investment you need for restoration, or how much economical loss you will have because you are losing this particular soil, for example, for agriculture. But how to calculate, for example, national parks that we lost? It's very difficult. It's very subjective, and in order to prove this to international society that these calculations are objective and can be taken as a reason to make the aggressor pay, it's very complicated. So there is the whole report about this research, and yeah. So, and as I understood now, our Ministry of Protection, they started to work towards the repayment of the damages based on this report from this initiative group. How to actually, that's why we have ecology inspection coming to the places where there were damages, environmental damages, together with police. So it's like crime, because it is crime. So they have to register it properly, document it properly, in order to have it really no doubt that it was done, and in order to present it to the international court.
I do have a question based on, again, what you've said. So all these inspections that come to Ukraine and they do their work, do you see any movement towards recognizing ecocide as an international crime? What
Yeah.
has like for example, what is being done on an international level?
And should it be treated as a war crime, as a type of war crime, the destruction of the environment?
It should, yes. And the huge NGO is working, actually, international NGO, Ecocide, and they are trying to push this question. And in the international level, I'm not a policy expert, so I can be really precise, but from what I know, it was already implemented for the United Nations documents. And in some, and it was actually for some years already, but we don't have the implementation instructions. How should be this implemented, like step by step? So, okay, to make the aggressor pay, we need to do this and that. Because it was after the Second World War that the whole process of implementing ecocide and in the international law started this process. So, and it was also already proved that it has influence on health, but also what could be called ecocide, what indicators should be taken into account. So, for example, what square kilometers, how big should be intoxication of the soil of what. So this is still under discussion. And for example, what should we consider long-term and short-term influences, impacts, and in order to call this particular impacts ecocide, because it's like a very strong term, ecocide. It's not just environmental damage. Ecocide is more powerful. It's about influencing on humans' life in long-term perspective. So it should be well documented, and there are still going on a lot of discussions on international level as well. And as always, it's not so quickly to be done while all these processes on the policy levels, international policy levels and national policy levels will be taken into account.
Are there any precedents that Ukraine can use? In history, has anyone ever been accountable for ecocide against an opposing side? Have reparations actually ever been paid to a country or a region?
If I'm not mistaken, it was after Gulf War, but the payment was very low, under 20% of what was requested, or even less. So it was maybe one or two successful cases, but not the full payment, and it was very complicated to do.
So it's really difficult because we have to work on developing and like specifying and kind of like constructing those like guidelines that have to be very concrete and very like step by step, because right now it seems that due to a lack of, I don't know, necessary terms, necessary documentation, it's aggressors, in our case, that's Russia, they're kind of like getting away with it. Like, I don't want to say that, but it seems like they're able to find the loop in that whole system, and well, it requires a lot of work.
Yeah, environment is complicated. We have ecosystems, and it's all interconnected, and it's very difficult to measure because, for example, we can easily measure how many buildings were destroyed, how many industries were destroyed. So this can be easily measured. Unfortunately, how many people were killed is also could be measured. But for environment, it's always a big question. I can tell you, as an environmental economist, it's always a big question. How can you calculate it, the impacts? For example, we can calculate the loss of biodiversity. Yes, but in money terms?
So you mentioned that, well, and it's obvious that the war has short-term and long-term impacts on the environment. In your opinion, what types of environmental damage caused by war tend to have the most long-term impact?
Pardon me, can you please repeat?
Yes, I was asking, so what do you think what environmental damage caused by the war tend to have the most long-term impact?
Oh, that's a tough question. Yeah, okay, I know it. It's mining and explosions. Shelling, mining, explosions. It was a big topic of discussion during our conference because we have a lot of territory in Ukraine is mined with land bombs, land mines. And we are one of the most mined countries in Europe at the moment, unfortunately. And they are everywhere. The landmines are everywhere in cities, in agriculture soil, in forests, in preservation areas. We have all over the border mined zones. And it's very, for example, in cities, it's of course, first of all, cities are demined. Then the agriculture soil and protected areas. Imagine how difficult it would be to demine all of them. And I don't think, sorry, it would happen because it's really expensive and not a priority. And if you are talking, and also one of the soil experts, Anastasia Sploditelj, she was telling that we have different ways of demining, and some of the demining ways are very bad for the soil, for the landscape, because sometimes it could even transport all the toxins, pollutions, even to the bigger territory, because usually the landmines are exploded, and that's how they are deactivated, let's say. So they are not anymore dangerous for the human health, for the animals, because animals are also suffering, they are dying because of the landmines as well. But when we demine in this way, it could be even more influence for the environment, for the soil. So if you demine in the, let's say, eco-friendly way, then you need to carefully extract the landmine from the soil, not to make it worse, let's say so. And it's even longer. So I think that this would be the most difficult, the most long-term impacts for us. And shelling, of course, because we have these craters filled of pollutants, and they are spreading to the groundwaters, to the air, and this air are now flooded to different countries, to Europe as well. There is a very nice research of Ukrainian scientists about this, about air. They were modeling how these polluters are spreading, and it's super complicated because it's much more easier to say about migration, for example, of animals, or to measure the soil pollution. But air pollution, it's very difficult. But imagine that. So all the pollutions, they from shelling, they moved to another regions, and then they stay in the soil because of the rain, of the natural processes. So yes, this would be the most long-term impacts.
I want to thank Desa Joseph, who's just dropped some very valuable information in our chat about precedent. Apparently, there is precedent. When Saddam Hussein's forces retreated from Kuwait in the Gulf War, they set oil wells on fire and caused massive environmental destruction. And the UN then created the United Nations Compensation Commission, and Iraq had to pay over $50 billion in compensation. This included environmental damage claims, oil spills, air pollution, ecosystems, and payments were taken from Iraq's oil revenue over decades. So this is a clear real-world example of enforced environmental war reparations. Thank you for that, Desha.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, I was remembering that it was Gulf War, but and I also know that they claim for a bigger amount, bigger sum, so not all of reparations were made. But at least, yes, at least this is a good news because it already happened, and we have hope that it could be also the case for Ukraine.
What we live in a globalized world, and the environmental damage that Ukraine is suffering from this war, it doesn't end at Ukraine's borders. Just like we saw during Chernobyl, the Soviets tried to keep it all under wraps, did not want to talk about it, tried to keep it a secret, and the West learned about it because a nuclear cloud passed over Sweden, and the Swedes raised the alarm, and that's when we learned that this
Catastrophe
catastrophe,
happened.
this
Yeah.
accident had actually happened. So clearly, environmental damage affects not just Ukraine, but Ukraine's neighbors and the world as a whole. Can you talk about that a little bit, Maria?
Yes, sure. There is a very good initiative as well who are measuring CO2 emissions. They started it also at the beginning of the war. Recently, they got a report about this, and that's already real numbers of how actually a war is influencing. They are measuring only direct CO2 emissions, but imagine indirect, because many countries started to produce more military weapons. The whole economies turned around because then they started to be afraid that they're going to be next, and they don't want to be next. For example, Europe, they started to make stronger the defense strategy and to produce more weapons, which causes also a lot of CO2 emissions. So instead of trying to decarbonize our economy, we are carbonizing it even more. So that's direct and indirect impacts, but also we can clearly see that Kakhovka Dam and a lot of pollutants went into the Black Sea. So some of the countries had quick direct influence from the war. Agriculture. Ukraine was supplying a lot of countries, including Africa's countries, with the products. And now we lost a lot of agriculture soil, and the ones that we took back, some of it is polluted, and farmers are still using, for example, land close to the border, for example, in Kharkiv region, in Sumy region, in Odessa region. They are using this agriculture land to produce products, to grow food, and we don't know for sure if they are not what the level of the soil pollution is there. So it could be also lost. I mean, so some of this land, agricultural land, could be also lost, and this is also the influence of the for the environment, international impacts, not only for Ukraine. Also, preservation areas. They are part of Emerald Network, European Emerald Network. And as you know, everything in nature is interconnected. And if in one part of Emerald Network we have damages, the nature is suffering, then of course it will be a chain reaction in different parts of this network, which are parks, national parks. They are doing this Emerald Network. So And biodiversity also, we are losing biodiversity, and it could influence also for the whole Europe. And for example, some birds, they were migrating through certain paths, and these birds, they don't belong to Ukraine only, but now they're also suffering because they are disturbed. Their nesting places are disturbed by shelling. On their way of migration, they are being killed, and so that's also impacts the international society. So many different examples that unfortunately these environmental impacts, they are not only causing troubles for Ukraine.
Your answer, I think, is leading me well to my next question. So it's not a secret that war generates enormous amounts of waste.
Yeah.
So how is that typically managed, and what challenges does it create?
Oh, multiple challenges, honestly. We have military waste now, which is, as I mentioned already, these bombs and machinery, and this has to be treated in certain way. We had the problems with waste management even before the war, and now it's even more complicated because for waste management we need big facilities, and some of the recycling factories, they were damaged because many of them, they were situated in the east of Ukraine. For example, Tetra Paks, they were in Zmiev, in Kharkiv region. So even that facility that we had for recycling, they were somehow influenced by war, damaged, or completely stopped. And we were researching the medical waste, how it going on, and we have only two facilities in Ukraine where they can be utilized, because it has to be utilized. Medical waste is completely different type of waste, and they have to be burned in with this high temperatures with the specific facilities. And we have only two factories that can do it, in Kiev and in Odessa. And we were interviewing hospitals in the west of Ukraine, in Ivano-Frankivsk. 10 hospitals were answering, and they were saying that usually the facilities, the factories, they are taking the waste, but sometimes it can be delays, because they are saying, now we are having attack, and in Odessa and in Kiev, attacks are almost every day. It's very often, and we need to wait until the attack, the shelling, the drone attack is over, and then we will go to you. We don't know when it will be. So it can be delays even with logistics, how to pick up the medical waste, for example. But we have only two facilities, and they can be destroyed every day. And we don't have the plan B for this. It's medical waste. So military waste, medical waste, households waste, huge problem. In Lviv, they started to have this big program about composting. So they have infrastructure for composting at least organic household waste, which is roughly 50–60% of all household waste, and they are quite successful in this. But it's only one city, and the problem is in all cities. But many of them, they consider it not as a first priority, of course, because they have more issues. so medical waste, household waste, and then we have waste from the destroyed, demolished buildings. Another big issue. We don't have enough. Again, we don't have facilities to recycle it, for example. So, of course, now there are initiatives that are working on how to deal with, for example, demolished building waste, what to do with dangerous waste from the military waste, because of these particles that are inside of military waste. We need to recycle it also, utilize it properly. So there are initiatives that are working towards different methods, but this method has to be very decentralized. We are not able to build big facilities according to the big investment needed for these facilities. We are not able to build them because they have to be mobile. One day they could be destroyed as well. So it's also a big question. So from one side, it's very complicated, but from another side, it gave a boost to research how to actually what to do with this waste. And yesterday it was a presentation from a Swedish professor, and he said that in Sweden they also have a problem with the demolished buildings, but they have these demolished buildings due to the climate change, because of the storms of strong wind. A lot of buildings are also destroyed, and then if we approbate kind of solutions in Ukraine already, it could be transferred to in another countries. So as with Chernobyl is now the biggest research laboratory, not at the moment because it's totally mined, 90% is mined, but it used to be before the war the biggest research laboratory for the international researchers. So now, unfortunately, Ukraine became a big platform, big laboratory for a different kind of researches and trials in terms of crisis conditions.
Thank you, Maria. Yeah, you know what? It's so funny because while Maria was talking, I was thinking, before we launched our UNWLA Book Club, we positioned it as a space with very casual, informal conversations. And today, like, we're talking about
heavy-duty stuff.
about very heavy stuff and very serious, like we're having a very serious conversation that raises a lot of different issues. And it doesn't seem casual at all. It was just a little side note. Do you want to share the news with our audience?
The news.
Not casual, but I think, the even dire information is useful information. And I think that the more information we have about this environmental damage that's done to Ukraine, the better equipped we all are to be part of the solution, to help in the whole rebuilding process. And so I'm glad that we're having this conversation. Yes, we'll be opening up our discussion to everybody. So put your thinking caps on and get your questions ready. But I would like to put out a teaser about the next book that we will be reading. Our next author is going to be Tanya Malarchuk, and the book that we will be reading is called Forgetfulness. It is a very good translation in English. It had some wonderful write-ups. And this is a novel about memory, about choices, about identity, about the search for meaning, and a lot more. Published in 2016, Forgetfulness, Forgottenness received appreciation from critics and readers and won the prestigious BBC Book of the Year award in Ukraine. So more details coming up. order your book, and stay tuned. And now, you know the drill. If you feel free to share your thoughts or questions about this book, or even a reaction, whatever you feel comfortable in. If helpful, we can start with these questions. Did the book change your life? How did it impact you and the way you see the war? Was there an idea or a moment in the book that stayed with you? So let's hear from you, dear readers and fellow participants.
I got one.
Hey.
So we got a question from Olga Livshin. So she has a question to Maria and perhaps the organizers. What gives us hope? What keeps you going? Maria, you want to address that?
Oh, that's also a tough question.
Deeply philosophical one.
Yes, yes, super. No, no, do not be sorry. It's nice. It's good to have this kind of question. It makes you think, which I love. I think that I don't know how to not to keep going, how not to do something about this, because if we stop, then it will be definitely worse. So we need to try at least. If we don't try, it will be not better for sure. So we want to keep this planet going for as long as possible. And I think that's the most important driver, because I think that what we are doing now, especially with the wars as well, we are doing worse for the human being, because we are in danger due to the damages of the environment. And as Irena said, Mother Nature, it always finds the ways how to survive. It will just shake us as a virus with all the climate changes and catastrophes, and it will keep going. Maybe because now we have a huge loss of biodiversity, and maybe it will change, so we will have new species, but no humans, unfortunately. So it will be like six time already, if to believe to the historian ideas that before us there were another human being that destroyed themselves, and we are heading there. So maybe the biggest hope that I need to have a hope. The biggest driver for me is my son, because I want him to live in a nice world. I want him to experience nature, which is beautiful in Ukraine, and nature is beautiful everywhere. And I guess for him, I'm trying to do my best, because I already saw a lot, but he is just starting to live in this world. So I really try to do my best for him.
Hope is the hope springs eternal. We always hope, and I'm pretty much a optimistic realist by nature. So I always think that things can get better, and I refuse to think negatively and think that the glass is always half empty. For me, it's always going to be half full. Also, as Ukrainians, there have been so many efforts throughout the centuries to destroy Ukrainians as a people, to destroy Ukrainian culture, to destroy the Ukrainian state every time it raises its head, from Russian empires to Soviet empires, and now again, neo-Russian imperialism. And yet the Ukrainian people survive. and they fight back. And they've shown themselves to be resilient. They've shown themselves to be strong and innovative. And there's nothing more dangerous than an angry Ukrainian. And so I have great hope for Ukraine. Also, many years ago, I saw a little documentary film about what would happen to our planet if humans suddenly disappeared. It becomes such a green place. It is just unbelievable how quickly even the most concrete of skyscrapers will become overgrown with vines, with vegetation. Water will suddenly appear. New flora and fauna will flourish. So life on the planet is a powerful force, and it will prevail. Unfortunately, as long as humans exist, we will continue to give Mother Nature a hard time and try to do things that are not good for the planet. So, Snezhana, you've got your hand raised. Please ask your questions.
Hi, everyone. It just reminded me what you just said, Irena, about how humans like trash the planet, basically, right?
Yeah.
And how during the pandemic in 2020, when everyone was prohibited to travel, suddenly Venice became cleaner. Suddenly, the smell started disappearing, the water became clear, so people can even see it through, people who were there. This is how populated areas get dirty easily with the people presence. My question is, so I'm doing the presentation in my college about Ukrainian history, and this book came very timely because I wanted to show the impact, how Ukrainian history has impact on not just Ukraine and that part of the world, but also on many more parts of the world. And with such an politics um, of isolation, of nowadays politicians trying to isolate, America is here and the rest of the world is there, so we're kind of not related. I wanted to show that America is related, and whatever happens on the other side of the world, whatever happens in Ukraine, is important for not just America, but for the rest of for other parts of the world. Like, for example, the agriculture, the decrease in agriculture in America affects the other side, like Africa, right? They don't get enough wheat from us that they used to. So what would be the suggestions, how I can show that the environmental impact in Ukraine should raise concern in America as well? How I can connect this impact? Any suggestions?
Maria?
If uh, if someone believes in climate change, because I know that it's still the question in US, especially recently, if I'm well informed, then it could be about this. But again, it's about long-term impacts. Direct impacts, I don't know how to show them right now to another. Well, it's like the island. We live on the same planet, and if something bad is happening in one place, then of course it will influence another. But it will be not directly. It will be not immediate. Nowadays, the US will not feel it. For example, in Germany at the beginning of the war, there were no sunflower oil on the shelves. It just disappeared at some point. And of course, then people started to think, oh, the war is influencing me. Um, but how to give reasons right now when you don't have a spoiled air or spoiled water already in your yard, or you don't have problems with I don't know, electricity or something, then it's complicated to connect it and to show you. Of course, you can show many numbers because we have these numbers about CO2 pollutions, as I mentioned, about the decrease of agriculture. But is it influencing US at the moment, the decrease of agriculture? I don't think so. I don't see the way how to actually convince strongly, because as I know, for Americans, it should be like really shown there. Like, okay, you have bad air. It's because of war in Ukraine right now.
It's like when you don't have an oil rain falling on your head, you cannot really connect the dots.
Yeah, exactly. When you start to have shortage of water, because, for example, in some parts of Ukraine, there is already delivered water, drinking water for communities. They don't have clean water to drink. Of course, for them, they could see how it influences the environment, how the war is influencing the environment. In US, I don't know, honestly.
Well, the U.S. has its own drinking water problems in various places that are polluted because of chemical plants and so forth and so on. Excuse me.
Because of industry. Yes, so not because of war, but because of industry.
Yes. It's certain things are very difficult to bring home to America because America is so far away from everything. The presence of two big oceans on both sides, and countries to the north and south that America sort of bullies a little bit, give it a sense of false kind of protection, and so forth. But we see tons of environmental problems in America. These recurring forest fires that are becoming increasingly more and more violent and ruining more and more communities and cities. All sorts of things. Desertification, entire swathes of the country are drying up. Reservoirs are drying up. Lakes are drying up. So
a number of what do you call those, like twister, or what do you call that?
Tornadoes.
Tornadoes that are not really common to some areas, and they I mean, like in New Jersey, like a couple years ago, somebody witnessed, like somebody actually recorded a tornado on their like phone, and it was such a shock because New Jersey is not a common place for a tornado.
No. Tornadoes are supposed to take place in the flatlands and the prairies. We had a mini tornado here in Washington, if you can imagine such a thing. But so I don't know.
Yeah.
One of the things that I always think of when I think about environmental damage, whether it's from Russia's war against Ukraine or any other environmental catastrophe that happens, and for people, and this is for people who think, oh, this is a problem that's contained in one area. I always remember these photographs that astronauts send back of our planet from space. There are no borders. You don't see anything. It's just this little green sphere with billions of people clinging to it. So if it happens in America, it'll affect people in Latin America. If it happens in Latin America, it'll affect people in Africa. If it happens in Africa, it'll affect people in Europe. It's a village. We basically live. Our planet is a big village. But I want to take our discussion maybe to the post-apocalyptic phase, if I may. The war will end, and of course, we all hope that it'll end with a resounding Ukrainian victory, and the buildup will begin. And there's a lot to rebuild, from a from an academic point of view, from an environmental point of view, and from an economic point of view. Maria, how should that rebuilding of infrastructure be prioritized? What's most important? Like, if you had to set a list of hierarchies, what has to be done first, second, third, fourth?
Oh, it's an entire strategy of rebuilding Ukraine.
in 3 minutes or less.
Yeah, I'm just a one person here, and it's a question to many different experts. So I will try. It's not the final decision, of course. We are just discussing today, so it's also as a philosophic, more or less answer would be because scientists are now saying that what decision we make now will influence on our future for when we will get a chance to rebuild. So they are trying to monitor the situation and try to find the solutions. So, for example, we have polluted soils. What we will do with this? We have nature-based solutions, for example, bioremediation. We can plant specific species plants. They will clean the soil. What can we do with these plants? We can do, for example, energy out of these plants. And then there is a question, when we will clean all the soil, where we will get the biomass. So it's just one of the example of different discussions about rebuilding, because it gives us a chance to change completely, to start from the new ideology to think more sustainable. So we have a chance now to change our economy towards more green, more sustainable economy. First of all, it will be decentralization of energy. I think that would be it should be the first step. We need to decentralize our energy. Then it will be.
What does that mean, Maria? Practically.
Yeah, so that means that, for example, in each community, we need to have renewables, but installed carefully, not to install windmills on the mountains in the preservation areas that we have right now going on. It's not good case. But solar panels, for example, biomass again. So different ways of decentralized our energy, not from hydro station, for example, as we had from Kakhovka, because we can see that it has terroristic potential. Then it could give a weapon for the aggressor, for the enemy, because it can destroy just one big facility for energy production, and that's it. Like half of the region or even country could be without electricity. So if we have like different small sources, and the whole international world is now talking about renewables, and usually they are decentralized. Big question about balancing these systems. But at least there are some solutions, and we have very nice reform done in Ukraine about hromadas, about communities, that we have more power in hromadas, and they are quite active. They are trying to actually to install and to get some investment, to get some support, and to have this decentralized energy system. So this would be one, because we also, for each community, they have different situations. So in one community, they have, for example, chicken factory that produce chicken meat. From this factory, you could have the residues of the chicken life cycle, let's say. And from this, they can have bioenergy, right? For another community, the solar panels are more better solution because they have more sun. For another, it would be winds. And so it's different solutions. So I think that this infrastructure should be rebuilt in the first step, because we need energy for everything, not only for everyday life of Ukrainians, But for economy, it's very important. You can see how struggle European Union is now to get enough energy for industries, for production. Energy is a huge topic. Again, that also forces to have wars, unfortunately. So if we will have these renewables, our own sources, we will be more independent. If it will be decentralized, we will be having less possibilities to terrorize us. Then, of course, people need to live somewhere, so we need infrastructure for buildings. We have so many people replaced. I'm from the west of Ukraine, and I can see it how my city, Ivano-Frankivsk, grown recently, many times already, and it's already too much for the infrastructure, for the roads. We don't have enough roads for the cars, so it became a problem already. So it would be great to rebuild the homes of people who were forced to move. I know for sure because I was living half a year in Germany, and I was so happy to come back to Ivano-Frankivsk that many people would love to come back to their cities, rebuild when they will be safe and when it will be possible to come back. So I guess infrastructure, but again, cities could be rebuilt in different way. And if we have a chance to rebuild them from the scratch, maybe it would be great to take a look on green-blue infrastructure, because again, we don't have to forget about adaptation to climate change. So then we can build this. It's highly technological, but if we are building the city from the very beginning, almost, or a lot of the city should be a big part of the city should be rebuilt, then we could include this modern nature-based solutions to adapt cities to the climate change. So cities and agriculture, it has to be also changed. We need to, because for example, now I also saw the results that protected forests lines that are around the agri-field fields, it's destroyed. Like many of these forests, they are destroyed, but we need them for agriculture because it raises the outcomes of harvest 30%. So we need to think about how we will do agriculture in more sustainable way, how we will clean the soil, how we will demine the soil and then clean it and measure the pollutions and clean it. So I think that's what we need. Energy, a place to live, and food. So that's three biggest topics as I can see it, to my opinion. But of course, but that's totally a different side of economy would be technologies, which we are very strong IT technologies, artificial intelligence, but it's not about nature. So I will not go to that topic because it's even more complicated and I'm not an expert in this one.
I'd like to read a couple of comments that people have shared with us. From Nadia Riteplo, Ecocide in Ukraine was an eye-opener for me as to the environmental destruction that the war in Ukraine is causing. Thank you for choosing this book and for the excellent discussion about it. Well, thank you, Nadia, for that. Spread the message of this book and get your friends to read it as well. Oksana Piasecka, our UNWLA culture chair, says everyone should read Ecocide in Ukraine. Ukraine's ecology and the world's ecology as well is dependent on knowledge. Most people are really ignorant of the consequences of our destructive politics. Thank you to Maria Fedoruk for her insight and suggestions. Thank you for those comments. For readers that are new to this topic, Maria. Oh, sorry, we've got a raised hand from Valia Levitska. Valentina, please ask your question, and I will continue my idea later. Okay. Maybe she has. Valia?
I think we should unmute her.
Well, yes, somebody
You're
should unmute.
unmuted. Yeah, you're
Okay.
unmuted.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And sorry, I cannot be online because I'm driving. But first of all, I would like to thank you, Anna and Irina, and our guest, Darina and Maria, for this wonderful discussion. And since it's a book club, so I hope, Irina, you would forgive me, but I want to advocate for the Ukrainian language. And I would like to add that we have at least one more word for earth, and it's a grunt. Grunt
Yes.
and
Mhm.
chernozem. So it's and it shows how deeply we rooted in the land. And I would like also to add that chernozem for Ukrainians, it's kind of like, you can compare, it's like gold. It's our national treasure. So if there is no grunt, no soil, there won't be bread, and there won't be, like, it would be holodomor, and it would be genocide. So it's, for us, it's like extremely important. And we had barely recovered from Chernobyl disaster when the war began. And I have a question to Maria. So has the mood and the level of hope among environment professionals changed in this since its fifth year of the war? So first of all, of course, we need to stop the war, but is there any assessment of how many years it will take to restore Ukraine to its pre-war state, which of course wasn't perfect to begin with? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. I have to say a bad news. We will not be able to restore the Ukrainian nature as it was before. Unfortunately, that all scientists are the same, have the same opinion that it can't be the same as it was before the war. We can try to make it better as it is now. And yes, it will take a lot of years, depends on the area, on the consequences, how bad was the damages, but it will be not less than 40, 50 years to some territories just to make them livable for a human being. So it's very sad, but I have to tell you the truth. I don't want to say something
that is not true.
That is not true. Yes.
Well, that's the environmental cost of Russia's war in Ukraine. Well, that's what the book is about.
Yeah, because for example, even fires of forests. Some forests were growing for 40, 50 years. And just to regrow these forests, it should take at least the same time. So it's a long process.
I'm reminded of an environmental success. Now, I've forgotten the name, but this was a famous photographer who was Brazilian. And I will remember, I'll look it up, and I'll tell you about him during our next book club meeting. But this is essentially what happened. He was a famous photographer, and he left the place where he was born because it had become a bit of an environmental disaster. Logging, mining, all kinds of other activities that basically rape the soil, rape the land, and leave it very depressed and seemingly hopeless. He became quite famous in the West as a photographer, and he decided to go back and fix things. And he and his wife, they came back and they just started planting trees. And very quickly, within a span of about 15 years, they turned everything around. So I have a little dream. When the war ends, I don't know how to do this, but I think that, starting an NGO, we'll just go throughout Ukraine and we'll plant trees. Trees are very, very important. They're good for the environment. they work against erosion, they keep the soil together. So ladies, I want you to think about it, and maybe we as UNWLA can come up with some sort of a post-war planting, tree planting
marathon.
Yeah. And I think that, because Ukrainians say that to be a real human being, you have to have a child, build a house, and plant a tree. So
yes,
that's. But are there examples, Maria, that you can think of, or that you may have seen or read about, where the rebuilding after environmental catastrophes and disasters, whether it's war or whether it's industry, led to an even better environmental outcome?
yes, of course. Maybe not better, but sometimes even better. Of course, there are many different examples of that's how we are taking the ideas. I have to turn on the light already because it's it's quite late here. So of course, there are many, for example, also this phytoremediation and technologies are developing as well, and they are developing also for the in the restoration areas. As I said, in Ukraine especially right now, many researchers are trying to develop new technologies. So definitely we could have very good results, and so it could be even more progressive if we make a good strategy now, because when the war will end, there will be so many different steps that we have to do, and in this rush, we should not forget about the environment, and that also keep in mind how do we influence on it. So of course it could be, for example, again with the waste from factories, from agriculture, they could pollute the surroundings with the end of life cycle of chicken, for example, or they can produce energy out of it. So I'm also optimistic about this. So I can see how scientists turned their thinking into how to actually not to damage the environment, how to prevent the pollution. So and having all this machinery, we should use it for good ideas. That's the only trick, because of course many business would force again to have more economic profit, but even economic profit could be better in a long term, because without environmental resources, even businessmen, they will be not able to have profit. So that's the main thought that they have to understand. Okay, now, so also it's super connected with what we had, because Ukraine, it was Russia was in an empire, and it was just using Ukrainian resources. It doesn't matter if it influenced nature or not. And so now we have to think in different way, that this is our land and we gonna use it for a long time, in a long time perspective. So we need to change the way of our thinking, and to think about the future, to plant trees, for example, to use to clean their surroundings, not just to produce a chicken meat and import it everywhere, but to think about the communities that live around this factory, and people who will be living on this land long after us.
So I found the Brazilian photographer whose name I couldn't remember. So his name is Sebastião Salgado, and after decades of documenting human suffering and social injustice through his iconic black and white photography, he and his wife returned to his family's ranch in a place called Minas Gerais in Brazil in the mid-1990s. And he found that the lush landscape that he had remembered from his childhood was completely gone, devastated by deforestation. So he and his wife launched an organization called Instituto Terra, Institut Zemlya, an ambitious project that since then has transformed over 1,500 acres of barren wasteland into a thriving tropical rainforest by planting more than 2 million native trees. So if they can do it, we can do it.
Well, and it doesn't take a lot of people, to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
2 people and
it's a good example how one person actually can do a lot of good, and also one person, we have example how one person can mess up the half of the world. So
yeah,
it's just a matter of choice. So about, again, the philosophical discussion.
That's true.
Ladies, any other questions? Anybody? Comments, ideas?
Not only ladies, we do have a couple of gentlemen.
Oh, hooray! I'm always thrilled to have more men in our book clubs.
I think we can wrap it up, right?
I think we can, yes. I'm writing the name of this photographer in the chat for anybody who wants to learn more about him.
I think today has been today we had a great discussion, very critical, very productive, very dynamic. And thank you, Maria, for sharing your insights and for finding the time and also sharing your perspective. We truly appreciate that. And I do want to remind all of us that our next book will be Forgottenness by Tanya Malarchuk. And please be on the lookout for a new registration link. So just keep an eye out, but more details are coming soon.
Yeah, I also want to thank you for choosing this particular topic, because the more we talk about it, the more international community could support us, and also how to. So I decided for myself that we don't need to show how it will be influencing on them. But if you want them to help us, we need to show the benefits. Here I'm thinking as an economist. So just to show the benefits, because we have many, many different solutions already in Ukraine. As I said, we are a big platform now, research laboratories. So we can give solutions already that could be used in different parts of world. So it could be a benefit for the US as well. And
Maria, just 1 second. Thank you for sharing a link to the network that you're in charge of, Ukraine Nature. And I encourage everybody to take a look at it and get involved.
Yeah, I shared the projects actually because they are a good example of hope of what is actually going on, and the example that there are many initiatives. That's not all the projects. There are many more going on. There are many initiatives in research communities, in NGOs, even in private business, who are working towards mitigating the environmental impacts of war.
Yeah, I think the more we stay informed, the more we can contribute to saving the planet. Yeah. All right.
All right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think,
Thank you to everyone.